This is a Willets Point Shea Stadium bound 7 express train. The next and last stop is Willets Point, Shea Stadium.
Oh, yes, it is the Subway to Shea podcast. Anthony Rivera here with you talking about all the news and happenings surrounding that team from Queens, the New York Mets. It's episode 222 from the Subway to Shea studios in my office. I just want to thank you all for bearing with me. I've been off the last couple of weeks taking care of some family business, but appreciate being back on here. You can follow Subway to Shea on X, Instagram, and TikTok at Subway to Shea. You can follow me on X at AntRivera86. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. And if you want to be a part of the conversation, you want to be a part of the chat, you're doing that on YouTube. So make sure you are locked in with the Subway to Shea podcast. I know it's late. A little Mets at midnight for everybody. Appreciate everyone that's tuning in. Shout out to Stanley in the chat. Shout out to my guy Carlos Ramos in the chat. Appreciate you all for tuning in to this kind of special, I guess, edition of Subway to Shea. I haven't done something this late and probably since the beginning of the show. And that's been 5 years. And you had to come on today for what was yesterday now, what was the breaking news. And that was that Brandon Nimmo has been traded by the New York Mets. He's on his way to Texas for Marcus Semien, the second baseman / infielder. Could play multiple positions, obviously third. He's played a little bit of shortstop as well, I think, at the beginning of his career. But a kind of, I don't want to say culture-changing moment, but it's a pretty big moment in the David Stearns era. Let's start that. That's probably David Stearns' biggest move right now, right? People will say Juan Soto, but a lot of people say that Steve Cohen was the one who brought Juan Soto to the New York Mets. This is a lot of emphasis on this trade, and I know a lot of Met fans are upset to lose Brandon Nimmo, who has been a key piece to this franchise since 2016, if you believe not. I mean, he was on that roster that won the wild card and went to that wild card game against San Francisco. He was on that team. And, throughout the years in 2017, 18, 19, dealt with a lot of injuries. Probably around 2022 and on is where we've gotten the best of Brandon Nimmo and offensively. And they re-signed him in 2023 to a big contract. That contract, which was, I think, off the top of my 8 years, $162 million at the 2023 season. So he would have been signed through 2030. Look, I'm still a little bit in shock of this trade. Not good, not bad, but I went on with Dexter Henry. You can check that out on the New York Post, straight out of Flushing. You can check that out. And we talked about this trade. This is kind of what David Stearns wanted, not to get rid of Brandon Nimmo, but to somewhat improve this team defensively. And you do that with Marcus Semien, who's a great second baseman. Now, obviously, the concern is the age, right? He's 35 years old right now. Brandon Nimmo, only 32 years old. But you can see the wear and tear in Brandon Nimmo. When he was signed in that 2023 season, that offseason from 2022 to 2023, it was for him to play center field. And he only did it for one more year. 2024, they move him to left field. Obviously, the Mets make it to within 2 games of the World Series in 2024. And then 2025, this past season, I mean, we talked about it ad nauseum of the collapse this team has had. And you kind of saw the wear and tear, like I said, in Brandon Nimmo. I know Carlos, who's in the chat, we talked about it multiple times. You can see him struggle, trying to have any type of range in getting to balls. You saw how he couldn't throw runners out either. Maybe once or twice he was able to do it. The injuries, especially towards the end of the 2024 season, because he was injured in that postseason. There was a big talk about how injured he was in that postseason. And he still grinded. No one will ever take that away from Brandon Nimmo being a grinder for this New York Mets team. And every time he would even get a walk, he's running to first base. But Brandon Nimmo, you started to see that wear and tear on his body, that wear and tear in left field. And to be signed as a center fielder and not be able to play that position kind of hurt the Mets. Because what have we been seeing in center field? You got good defense from Harrison Bader, but offensively he couldn't hang, right? Tyrone Taylor, we know what he is. He's a fourth outfielder. And the Mets couldn't really do anything with Brandon Nimmo being in left field. You got Juan Soto in right field, who's not the greatest of outfielders himself. And you leave yourself with a center fielder, although very great defensively, struggles offensively if he is exposed, and that's in Tyrone Taylor. They tried bringing in Jose Siri to help out. He was awful. So the Mets had to make a move to kind of, switch up, I guess, this core, right? There was always this talk after this season that the core needed to be changed, right? Pete Alonso, free agency. Maybe he's gone. We don't know yet. I would like to see him come back. I don't think he's the problem. He doesn't add to the defense that is needed at first base, but I mean, he kind of takes care of business at the plate. Talk about trading Jeff McNeil, which I think is something that we're going to see. I know Stanley mentioned it in the chat. Does McNeil get traded next? I think it's quite the possibility that Jeff McNeil is not on this team at the start of the 2026 season. Where are you going to play him? You have Marcus Semien now playing second base. Obviously, he's a good utility guy, but you got younger guys now, right? There's younger players out there now on this Mets roster. Whether you want to talk about Brett Beatty, who's going to be playing third base and can spell Marcus Semien and play pretty decent second base. I think he could play a little bit of outfield. You got Jet Williams in there, Ronnie Mauricio, Luis Angel Acuna, who I don't think are all going to be on this team to start the 2026 season. So those guys might be traded as well. And there's a lot of work to be done, right? Stanley says Stearns has a lot more work. He put more work on himself, I feel like, making this trade. Although getting the defensive player, you have now taken out two guys who hit over 20 home runs, who can definitely get you 90 or more RBIs, and now you have to replace those two bats. And I hope and I assume that David Stearns will do that. So I won't really kill this trade until I see the final project in February when we get to spring training. But it is a little sad to see Brandon Nimmo go. As Carlos Ramos says, he went from being an elite center fielder to having trouble just running to the ball. And that was probably a big issue, right? That's why they moved him to left field. In 2024 season, he gets hurt. He's got the chronic neck back injury. He hurt his leg in the postseason. And at some point, I know we've all talked about this. I know we've all talked about Pete Alonso, if he comes back to the Mets, that maybe it's time for him to DH, right? Play less first base and be more of a DH. Well, the guy that if he was still on this team that really needed to be a DH, is Brandon Nimmo. Brandon Nimmo should not be in the outfield for an entire season. And I know the Mets like to have versatility when it comes to the DH. I hope they get a real DH like a Kyle Schwarber. I don't know if that's realistic, but that's a guy that I would like to see at DH. But if the Mets were to keep Brandon Nimmo, he was the guy that even more than Pete Alonso needed to become a DH because his body is tearing apart. And Pete Alonso is more a healthy guy, right? I mean, he's pretty healthy. He's played full season, played 162 games. But Brandon Nimmo has been struggling to stay healthy. And obviously, he struggles defensively because of that. And sometimes will struggle offensively. So this trade tells a lot about what David Stearns is looking for, which is run prevention, one, good defense, which he preached during the GM meetings, which he preached during the final press conference after the season was over. And here is step one, bringing in a more defensive-minded player in Marcus Semien. And he's had offense in the past, right? And I could bring up his offense here, which I'm going to do right now for you guys. If you look at the last couple of years between Brandon Nimmo as well as Marcus Semien, Marcus Semien has been a better hitter. If I could bring this up for you all. Overall stats, thanks to Craig Moranci for sending me this tweet. Head to head, the last 5 years between them has over 10 points more in WAR, wins above replacement. The games are almost similar, only 71 more. Semien leads categories in hits, home runs, RBIs, stolen bases. Batting average goes to Nimmo, which is 10 points higher, and on base percentage, because we know he's leading off. Slugging percentage more goes to Marcus Semien, and then the OPS and OPS plus goes to Brandon Nimmo. But you see all the awards and honors. He's got the championship with Texas. He's been an all-star, gold glover, silver slugger. Nimmo will get his all-star. I don't know if that's updated yet, but Nimmo went to the all-star game, so that should get up there soon. Marcus Semien's no slouch, but there is concerns for me, right? His age is a huge concern. Could he deteriorate at this moment in time? Like, could this be the end for Marcus Semien? The good thing is he's only here for a couple more years. Only a couple more years. Signed through 2028. Now, I know the Mets gave some money as well. John Heyman from the New York Post said that they gave the Texas Rangers about $5 million more to kind of even out this trade. And that was a thing too. I talked about this with Dexter Henry on the New York Post show before the season ended, and on my show when he hopped on my show, talking about, if you're going to break up this core, who is the guy that probably needs to go? And it's Brandon Nimmo. And I love Brandon Nimmo. But the contract, along with his health, was not going to add up by the time his career and by the time that contract was over. He had to move. They had to move him. And a lot of people said, I don't think he's going to get traded. That contract's going to be impossible to trade. Well, Stearns just did it. Stearns just did it. Now, shout out to Armand in the chat. He goes, I did not expect Nimmo to waive his no trade clause. I didn't either, especially when he said he wanted to be a Met his entire career. I didn't expect Nimmo to waive his no trade clause. And when you think about that, as well as see what team he went to in the Texas Rangers, there's only one name in mind that I thought could convince him to do that. And I think Mike Puma posted it, that it was Jacob deGrom. And I think that talking with Jacob deGrom helped him feel a whole lot better in okaying this trade. So Brandon Nimmo's on his way to Texas. Marcus Semien will be coming to Queens. And what does the future now hold for the rest of this offseason for the New York Mets? Does that mean that Pete Alonso is going to be coming back? Does it mean, we get to see Edwin Diaz come back? There's been some talks, and I didn't get to read the article yet, but I think in Will Salmon's article, there was talks that, there's kind of a stalemate maybe in talks with Edwin Diaz and the amount of years. I think Edwin wants 5, Mets want 3. Maybe they're looking at Suarez. Maybe they're looking at Devin Williams. That is a big key piece that they're going to have to lock down when it comes to closer. Armand in the chat also saying, I believe Senga gets traded before McNeil. This was another guy that I was like, maybe these are the two big guys that the Mets should be trading. Nimmo, Senga. Senga can't stay healthy. And there's just way too much maintenance involved with Kodai Senga. I know the contract is good, and I won't be upset if they hold on to him. But, man, having to go through the maintenance it takes to keeping this guy on the field, it's already hard enough to keep an entire rotation on the field. And then you got to build your rotation around Kodai Senga. It's not the way to go. Unless you now move him to, 4th, 5th in the rotation. You got Nolan McLean. Maybe Brandon Sproat will be a part of that. They tendered a contract to David Peterson, so I assume he will be in the rotation. Sean Manaea getting another opportunity. And obviously they need to get an ace somehow, some way. I don't know if it happens during this offseason or if it happens during the midseason with a trade. But as Stanley says, this team needs starting pitching. Now, with Brandon Nimmo gone, 2 outfield spots are open, right? And I'm not 100% sure if Carson Bench is ready. I'm going to have to get on either Joe DeMayo or my guy Ernest Dove as well. Because I want to know where Carson Bench is in his process. I know that David Stearns mentioned him during the offseason and during the GM meetings. And that was probably one of the biggest takeaways during the GM meetings is what David Stearns had to say about Carson Bench competing for that center field position during spring training. So does that mean the Mets are not going to bring in a center fielder? Maybe they're going to have Tyrone Taylor start off the year and hope for the best. But they're not going to be able to do that with both positions, right? They're going to need to get an outfielder out there. And I don't think it's going to be Kyle Tucker. I don't really know too much about his defense, but I do know about Cody Bellinger and how good his defense is out there. And I think Cody Bellinger might be coming to Queens. I think the Mets might spend on Cody Bellinger. Because before they traded Nimmo, the only 2 spots that could possibly be fixed via free agency was center field and first base. They had the logjam at second base. So only really first and center field. And Cody Bellinger was one of those guys that could play both positions. So I think that maybe Cody Bellinger quite possibly could be the move that the Mets make for more defense. Now, they're still going to need bats. I don't know if they look into Kyle Schwarber. I don't know if they're going to try to bring back Pete. But for one thing's for sure, David Stearns has definitely shaken, shaken the room. John Child doesn't like the trade. He says it was a disgusting trade. Heckler Pick saying, same exact concerns about Marcus's age. This is also what I don't get. Why Nimmo and not the squirrel? The thing is, you're not going to get much, I don't think, for McNeil. He's either got to be, I don't want to say a throw-in a trade, or you might get a reliever for him, but they're not going to get much for Jeff McNeil. I don't have any high hopes that he's going to bring us back something big or be part of something big. Stanley saying Alonso and Diaz need to return. I would love to see them both come back. I know Pete Alonso struggles with throws at first base, but the guy can sure pick balls, man. He could pick up some bad throws. He's not the worst first baseman, and he did have the yips last year. But the dude works hard every game, and he's going to provide you with over 30 home runs, over 100 RBIs. And the Mets desperately need that in this lineup. You can get better defensively, but if you can't score, and if this team's rotation is not going 5 or more innings, it's a struggle. It's going to be a struggle to win games. You're going to lose games, 1-0, 2-1, 3-2. They got to get it done. And when it comes to Edwin Diaz, I was going to do a fun little, activity with Dexter Henry on Straight Outta Flushing, where we kind of picked our team and what was going to be the biggest move. I thought the biggest move of this offseason, and I know a lot of people don't want to hear, but Edwin Diaz, I thought was the biggest move to make this offseason. I mean, without him in the closer's role, who are you going to throw out there? The bullpen's already a mess. They got to try to rebuild that again. They need Edwin Diaz, and he's the best closer out there. He's already proved that he could pitch in New York. I would like to see Edwin come back. Armand says to offer him 4 years, $100 million. I would totally do that deal with Edwin Diaz. Heckler Picks saying Senga's made of glass. He's been a huge disappointment. At best, he can't be a starter. I don't know if he's been a huge disappointment, but I would say that it's been disappointing that he can't stay healthy, because when he is on the mound and he is healthy, he's pitched pretty well. If you look at his record and ERA, he's been pretty good as a New York Met. But as I said before, he struggles to stay healthy. There's always something wrong with his mechanics. And he's just very high maintenance. And I think the Mets need to move on from that. John Child saying Semien is good for at least 90 games on the bench a season. I don't know about that, because I'm looking at his stats right now. And let's see how many games Marcus Semien has played. 2025, he played 127 games. 2024, 159 games. He played a full 162 in 2023, 2022, 161, 2021, 162. Now, obviously that changes because he's a lot older. But we'll see. Carlos Ramos saying, by the way, Acuna is playing center field part-time in Venezuela. I think he just got hurt too. And he hasn't been playing the last couple of days. I think he got hit in the wrist and he's not playing, I don't know how I feel about Acuna in center field because he's not going to provide any offense. I'd rather Tyrone Taylor at that point. Mastodon de Mastodon says they got off the last 2 years of Nimmo. I think Trevor will have a bounce back year with the bat. Are you talking about Marcus Semien who's going to have a bounce back year with the bat? I think that's what you meant. It's quite possible. But yes, getting out of those 2 years of Nimmo was a huge deal for Stearns and for the Mets. Not only the defense, but getting out of those final 2 years of that contract because it wasn't going to age well. Stevie Mack saying Tucker is probably going to get way overpaid. I assume so. And I think that, maybe the Mets change directions and go with one Cody Bellinger. Could there be a trade coming as well? Like there's talk about San Diego trading their pieces away. Like, was Fernando Tatis Jr. available? I don't know. We will see how this offseason files out. Hayden J says, do you feel trading Nimmo now helps or increases the odds of Alonso coming back? It would be very helpful for sure. I thought so. But, the Mets are still paying for Semien, so it's kind of this season, the contracts are a wash. So I would have assumed so maybe earlier on in the day that Alonso's coming back. But now thinking about it, Stearns might just want to build his team in his own image and might not want Alonso back. I mean, we saw last season the whole struggle to get this contract done with Pete. If you could tell in the press conferences too, Pete wasn't as happy, kind of, taking jabs at the front office. So we will see if they get this deal done. One guy's already off the board, as we know, in Josh Naylor. That would have been the replacement for me if you were letting Pete go. But now he's off the board, so I don't feel comfortable with Mark Vientos playing first base. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but the Mets definitely got to get something done. Armand is saying if Stearns wants short-term deals, 3 years, then he should call the Twins and trade for Buxton, who has 3 years left at $15 million AAV, and Joe Ryan or Pablo Lopez have to come in the package. Now, I would definitely take one of those pitchers. Man, I don't really know how I feel about Buxton. Would that how much prospects would we have to give up to bring Buxton in here? And two, isn't he always injured? That's my concern. That's my big concern with Buxton is he's not healthy. And then didn't he not want to be traded or something? He's got a no trade clause. Maybe he'll do what Brandon Nimmo did. John Child saying if you want defense, you want Tatis. Let's see if he's available. I mean, I'd entertain it. That's for sure. I'd trade whoever you want for Fernando Tatis to be in that outfield. Can you imagine Tatis in left field, Soto in right, and I guess for now, Tyrone Taylor? Or if you want, you can still sign Cody Bellinger. Or Carson Benj. Maybe Cody Bellinger plays center field until Carson Benj is ready, and then he goes to first. Shout out to my guy, Andrew Acevedo, the Rhino from Mets Weekly. Make sure you check out them. I'm pretty sure they have covered it all earlier on today. But shout out to him and shout out to the crew at Mets Weekly. Appreciate them. Frankie Diaz saying, what's up, brother? Tatis or Scuba trade incoming? Oh, man. That's tough. Because I really want to ace on this rotation. They really need they really need an ace, a stopper to stop losing streaks. this is a tough decision because Tatis plays every day. Skubal plays once every 5 days. But Skubal is the elite of the elite starting pitchers right now. Do the Mets have enough prospects to pull off both? They are the number one ranked, well, at least by ESPN, they are the number one ranked farm system. So they have the pieces. But man, I'd like a piece of both of those guys. But if I had to choose one, I think I would go Skubal in a trade only if they're able to sign him because he's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. Are we going to be able to do a sign and trade? If not, then I guess I would just go with Tatis and wait until free agency for Skubal. Carlos Ramos saying that Luis Angel Acuna is back in the lineup tonight. That's good because he got hit in the wrist and that looked like it hurt. It looked like it hurt. Heckler Pick saying she would take Cody Bellinger in a heartbeat. I would too at this point. I would too. Stanley saying, and who else will the Mets trade? I think that the other two pieces are probably Senga and probably Jeff McNeil. Maybe throw in a Mark Vientos, maybe. Unless the Mets really want to get crazy and go Brett Beatty and then sign Alex Bregman. I'm not saying they're going to do that, but if they want to get that crazy, that's a possibility. But Brett Beatty looks like he's going to be the third baseman. But I would say McNeil, Senga, and possibly a Mark Vientos, and definitely a couple of these infielders that are log jamming second base, whether it's Ronnie Mauricio. We could probably even see Jet Williams going to trade. Some of these prospects are getting traded this offseason. If the Mets want to get an ace in this rotation, whether it's go after Skubal or, as Armand mentioned, going after a Ryan, a Lopez. I mean, you want to throw Sandy Alcantara in there from Miami. You want to throw, who else is there out there? That's Freddie Peralta from Milwaukee. You're going to have to give up some guys for those pitchers. So I see some definitely a big pitching move being made because, let's be honest, outside of what? Framber Valdez, is there really any other ace out there? Like Framber Valdez, he was the ace of, I would assume he was the ace of Houston. But I don't see, Dylan Cease, he's probably a good 2 or 3, right? He's not an ace type pitcher. Armand saying Skubal won't sign the extension. Then, honestly, I don't want to make that trade. I don't want to trade all those prospects and then, he goes out in free agency because, as much as Steve Cohen has the money, he may like it somewhere else. So I don't want to take that chance. So maybe the answer is going after a Joe Ryan or Pablo Lopez or a Freddie Peralta. Thank you, Armand, for that. Hunter Brown is the ace of the Astros. Framber was the number 2. I feel like we have enough number 2s and 3s. Definitely have tons of 4s and 5s. And don't really need that. So as we wrap up the show here, shout out to all 188 after midnight wanting to talk New York Mets with me. Appreciate you all for being a part of the show and being a part of this whole discussion. David Stearns, look, we already need 2 outfielders, 2 bats. So there goes that. Need an ace of the staff and need to definitely remake this bullpen. And I hope that the Mets are able to do that in this offseason. I do believe this is part 1 or step 1 in a bigger process that's going to happen. So I don't want to kill this trade. Shout out to Brandon Nimmo and all he did in his Mets uniform. Always have that lasting memory of him crying on the mound after the Mets eliminated the Philadelphia Phillies to head to the NLCS. He was a solid Met, but, times are changing. And, David Stearns now has the opportunity to put together the team that he wants. He did the last couple of years, he evaluated and watched this team and try to piece together pieces to see if they would work. And obviously in 2024 worked, 2025 it didn't work. And 2025 it didn't work big time. So now he has to fix things. Steve Cohen obviously was upset with how things ended. And there's a lot of pressure on him to make this team better and to make this team a playoff team consistently. And hopefully this trade frees up some space for the Mets to do that. They get out of the final 2 years of the Nimmo contract. By the time Marcus Semien is done with his contract, I'm pretty sure, obviously Jet Williams, or, if he's still on the team, will be a part of this, and maybe Ronnie Mauricio. We're definitely going to see what David Stearns, because this is David Stearns' biggest offseason to me. If he does not get this team into the postseason, I have legitimate concerns with how he runs this organization. This is not Milwaukee. So he's got to get things done here. He's got Steve Cohen's wallet, and hopefully David Stearns uses his noggin and brings in the right players to make this team a consistent winner season after season after season. Shout out to Peter in the chat. Let's go Mets. Red Horse Adventure says, for all the stuff that Boris takes for getting his clients the most money, he absolutely facilitated this trade, his communication to both players to make this happen. Yeah, he's their both of their agents, so absolutely. Carlos Ortiz saying Nimmo's gone means Soto to left field and finding someone for right field. I don't really know if Soto's going to be moving yet. I don't know. I don't think it happens this season. I'd be shocked if he agrees to do that. Peter saying Scooble incoming. Red Horse Adventure saying Bellinger would do well as a Met. Peter also saying thinks the pressure is on Lindor and Soto. Absolutely. They got a lot of pressure on them. Because they right now are the core of this team. They're the elder statesmen of this team. They're going to be in charge of this clubhouse and this locker room. Carlos Ramos saying it was good for both parties. A lot of people agree. A lot of people disagree. I think this was good. I think at the end of the day, when we look back on this trade, it's something that needed to be done. It sucks to have to lose Brandon Nimmo, but getting out from those final 2 years of his contract is pretty huge. I'm telling you, I think he's heading to be a DH at some point, real soon. Real soon. Red Horse Adventure saying, seems like GM meetings facilitate trades. Winter meetings are for free agent signings. Yeah. You know how boring this time is in the offseason, how long it takes moves to be made. This is the biggest move that's happened so far this offseason. And it's taken, about 3 or 4 weeks now? Close to a month? Peter saying Rangers YouTube is like Semien is a leader. That's what I've been hearing too. I was actually in a space earlier on today, and a Texas Rangers fan came on and said, you guys are really going to love Marcus Semien outside of, if you look past his age, you look past his struggles, offensively, he has been a leader in the clubhouse, on the field, and that is something that hopefully translates out. Brandon Nimmo is a leader too, let's be fair. Him, Lindor, were leading that team in the clubhouse. Hopefully Marcus Semien can fit in well and be a part of that. Heckler Pick saying, as you know, the Mets payroll is hefty, so now it's sink or swim for Stearns. For the fans' sake, I hope he does well, but she is not confident. It's a little hard to be confident after what we've seen, but, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt since it worked in 2024 and he got us to within 2 years of 2 wins of a World Series. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. But if it doesn't happen this season, if he doesn't get things done this season, I'm going to have major concerns of if he can run a big market team. Not going to say he's going to get fired. I think he's going to, be here for his entire tenure, or I think the 5 years that he was signed for. But I will have major concerns. Carlos Ramos saying, and that Met core had to be broken up already. A lot of people would agree. A lot of people were talking about it as this season was dwindling. How are you going to break up the core? Is it time to trade Lindor? Is Soto just going to be the leader eventually? Let Alonso go. Get rid of McNeil. Trade, is bound to happen. And this was step one in kind of changing the trajectory of what the culture of this team and that clubhouse is going to be about. Peter says, that's why I think the Mets traded Nimmo, because there are a lot of potential DHs on the Mets. Yeah, you don't want to have the issue that the New York Yankees have, where they have so many DHs and they're kind of saddled with Stanton and a couple of these other guys that probably shouldn't be on the team right now. Red Horse Adventure saying, wonder what the Yankees fans are thinking. Scared Bellinger is leaving. I mean, I would be concerned, because if you read between the lines, if you read the tea leaves of what David Stearns has talked about the run prevention, about defense, Cody Bellinger fits that. Cody Bellinger fits that to a T. If I could find his baseball savant page, his defense is outstanding. Now I'm going to bring that up right now. Cody Bellinger's savant page is pretty fantastic. His fielding range, look at that. Look at his range. 93rd percentile, right? Arm value, 91. Arm strength, 83. I mean, he's one of the best defensive players out there. And on top of that, he can hit. Had 29 home runs last season. OPS of 814. Might have to bring him in. Just might have to do it. Stanley saying this trade is step one for Stearns. I absolutely believe that. I think this is step one in what is going to be a huge offseason for him. Carlos Ortiz saying, what does this mean for Pete and Diaz? Well, it definitely means that no one is safe, one, on this team, right? And that includes Pete and Edwin. But I would assume that they would want to get some offense on this team, and Pete provides that. Edwin, I think it all depends, possibly both of them, on the years. Apparently, Edwin Diaz wants 5 years. The Mets are stuck at 3 at this moment in time. Can they give him a little more money and see what happens there? I don't know. But I'm not going to assume that both Pete and Edwin are coming back. Yeah, Peter, we all said Nimmo's contract was untradeable, but it was the one that needed to go, for sure. Stearns definitely a bench guy. You got that right. Good back-to-back comments from Peter. He talked about him all GM meetings. We've talked about it early on in the show. Says he's going to have a big opportunity to play center field in spring training and get the opportunity to win the job. Peter's saying, I think once Nimmo lost the leadoff spot, the Mets saw his future as a DH. I mean, I started seeing his future as a DH watching him play left field last season. You could just see the struggle for him. His range wasn't there. The arm strength's not there. You know, it's probably good to check Brandon Nimmo's Savant page and see where he is at defensively. As my computer freezes on me. Let's bring up his Savant page. Look at that. 42 range, 51 arm value, and arm strength 48. Not a great outfielder. Manageable, yes. But for the contract he was being paid for, which was to be a center fielder, only played 1 year at center field and moved to left field. It was not worth keeping him on that roster. Stanley saying Lindor is the leader of the team. I agree. And Peter thinks that they should put Soto in left field. I just don't think it happens this season. I think he's going to be, headstrong on playing in right field. I guess unless Kyle Tucker becomes a Met, but I don't know. I don't think they're going to pay for Kyle Tucker. I just don't. But I didn't think that, I wanted to see a trade with Nimmo. I didn't think it was possible. But David Stearns made it happen. So let's see what David Stearns has up his sleeve the rest of this offseason for the New York Mets. I just want to thank everyone for coming on the show today in the chat. Almost 1 a.m., but you guys are hanging with me, and I appreciate you. If you want to, follow me, you can do that on X, Instagram, and TikTok at Subway to Shea. Follow me personally at Rivera86. You can subscribe and listen to the show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. But if you want to be a part of the chat, you want to be a part of the conversation, you are doing that right here on YouTube. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We had over 200 people in the room here at this very, 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 very late or very early morning to talk about Brandon Nimmo and being traded to the Texas Rangers for Marcus Semien. Once again, thank you, everyone. We will see you next week, probably back to my usual time, 10 a.m. on Sunday morning. But until then, this has been Anthony Rivera. You've been watching or listening to the Subway to Shea podcast. And always remember, let's go Mets.